Good morning and welcome to our live webinar, how to spot and stop unemployment fraud with Tyler Technologies. My name is Andrea Chim and I am the Communications and Events Coordinator at the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We are very excited to partner with Tyler Technologies again to show you what to look for and what to do if you become a victim of unemployment insurance fraud. Before we jump into the program, there are a few housekeeping details. Guests are welcome to submit questions in the chat function on the right-hand side of your YouTube screen by logging into your Google or YouTube account. If you have questions after the program concludes, you can send them directly to our presenter, Max Greene, at max.greene@tylertech.com. And with that, I will turn things over to Max Greene to begin the program.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar on unemployment insurance fraud. And with the big question, are you compromised? And I'm hoping that not very many of you are, but this has been very prevalent in our state as well as nationwide. For those of you that joined me for the last webinar that we were fortunate to join you for the how to work from home securely. We had mentioned that there were going to be, and now obviously have been, serious upticks in cybercrime. And one of the biggest things that we have seen is, again, this nation-wide attack on unemployment insurance fraud. So we're just going to dive right into that. So again, this isn't just affecting us here locally in Maine, but in states all across the nation. As early as end of May, back in May 20th, the Secret Service was actually circulating a memo trying to get ahead of this as early as possible. Unfortunately, this due to COVID and the just general chaotic environment that we found ourselves in the last 4 months or so, the kind of average checks and balances to going through the process of getting people their unemployment claims really got sped up in hopes of stimulating the economy, in hopes of getting people their money. So we weren't being as diligent as we normally would have been. And we can see here that the memo circulated to field offices across the United States says that a ring has been filing unemployment claims in different states using social security numbers and other personally identifiable information, which we call PII, belonging to identity theft victims, that a substantial amount of the fraudulent benefits submitted have used PII from first responders, government personnel, and school employees. So that was true. In kind of the earliest form of this, as we were seeing municipalities kind of being targeted. At this point, we have really kind of graduated to so many of the large employers, especially here in our state, having been hit. I can tell you, I myself actually was hit with this particular thing, where they had gained access to my identity, had submitted me for unemployment, and of course I wasn't actually attempting to go through that process. So really, this didn't come down to laziness on any of these kind of people's behalf, on individuals' behalf, although we will kind of talk about defenses and what to do if you haven't been hit, what to do if you have, but know that this really, this access of information, from what people can tell, has come from this Nigerian group, Nigerian crime ring known as Scatter Canary. And they have probably accessed this information from one of the larger credit breaches that we've had in the past. It's been believed to be the Experian breach, but it could have been from Equifax or any of the major breaches that we've really seen in recent times, where through those breaches, people were able to get things like your social security number, your address, your phone number, and the things needed to register for these claims. So what's interesting about this whole process is they are utilizing, for the most part, the web in order to go to people's different states and register as them with the information that they've obtained to sign up for unemployment benefits and receive unemployment. But they're doing so by putting in they're giving it a bank account number, and that the money is then wired to that account. Again, these accounts are still being set up under under the people's names of identities who have been stolen. So then the bigger issue for the crime ring is now, how do we get this money out of these accounts that are just lying in waiting? Now, we as individuals aren't aware of these accounts because they set up different contact information, and only our social security numbers and our names are associated with accounts. They might not even be accounts within the state. So they might set up the bank account in Washington State and then hope to get their unemployment from Maine direct deposited there. Again, this is something that normally would have set off a lot of red flags, but because of people relocating so prevalently during COVID, people have kind of just let that go. Then on top of that, they're attempting to, launder the money even further using mules, either willing or unknowing. A lot of this is being done through, your kind of classic romance Craigslist scams, or scams on Tinder, or any kind of people desperate, looking to get those people that are desperate for a quick buck into some money making possibilities, and they'll convince you, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. Can I put money into your account and you'll be able to keep X of the money? And that's kind of how they're getting it back to themselves. The money issued via direct deposit is most common, and that's why most people don't realize right away that they've been victims of this. Another thing is that you might receive a Visa debit card. This was the case for me, as oftentimes if the cybercriminal is not able to provide a bank account for this money to be direct deposited to, it means that the actual individual who has not submitted for this unemployment fraud will receive a debit card at their home, because through the process, with the state working with the employers, they're reaching out and and verifying, your most recent address. The employers are getting it back to them, and so sometimes people are seeing these Visa debit cards. That said, anyone who has been signed up for this unwittingly or unknowingly should have received a piece of mail from their State Department. In our case, you should have received something from the state of Maine, Department of Labor, that basically says, you've received this money. This is the amount of money you will receive till X, and it will show a statement that the money has been processed. If not, you might receive that debit card. So for any of you that have maybe just seen mail and thought, oh, it has nothing to do with me, thrown it out, please be diligently checking for that. But we'll talk about some other things you can do just to make sure you haven't been become a victim of this crime. Just so we're aware, banks at all levels have been targeted, from local banks to credit unions to large national banks. If you are part of a financial institution and you're aware of fraudulent accounts and you're not sure what to do in terms of how do we get that money back to the state, work with the Secret Service, work with your local banking associations, because this is now such a large scope thing. People are very aware of it, and we're all working together to get these funds back where they belong. If you have received this and you thought, it was just an extra benefit, and you got the debit card, reach out to the state, explain what happened, and let them know that, the confusion that's occurred. But hopefully, if you receive this and you did not sign up, do not spend the money, because you will still be taxed on it after the fact. So we have two things happening here. One is just clear-cut fraud. It's a massive multi-million-dollar criminal attack against both state unemployment insurance systems and the federal government, as well as identity theft. So stolen personal information is being used to file the claims, and this is including your name, your address, your social security number, your date of birth, and your employer. Again, if you've been affected, you receive correspondence from your State Department, you'll get a claim notification, you'll get a monetary determination, and you'll get a payment notice. And your employer should alert you. If you are an employer, again, that has been notified by any of your employees that this is happening, again, reach out to the Secret Service, reach out to the state fraud, make sure that you file a claim as an employer as well, and also, direct your employees to resources and help them. If you're an employer listening to this and your employees don't know what to do, please utilize this session as a resource for what they can do next. So if you have become a target, you do want to report your fraud to your state's Department of Labor. Again, for us, it'd be right on maine.gov. But if you are out of state, find online by searching report unemployment fraud. At this point, I think you can even just type in dol.gov. It is a resource site now for the fraud because it has become so prevalent, which will give you contact for any state in which you need to communicate with. When you go to report fraud, it will ask you to do a fraud reporting form, which will require your name, your address, your date of birth, the last four of your social, your email, and some additional details. What should you do if you think that you have been, if you know rather that you've become a victim, and even if you were worried that you had been? Well, these are all the things. You should definitely check your credit report for unusual or suspicious activity. Again, if people are opening up accounts in your name, that'll be something that pops up. You also just want to make sure people aren't opening up loans or anything additional. You want to freeze your credit and set up fraud alerts. Now, people get really concerned when we talk about freezing credit. To freeze your credit does not mean that your regular credit cards won't work anymore. It simply means that no one can open up a new line of credit without you allowing it. So you can go in there, you can set up a PIN, which will freeze your credit. But you need to do this for all three of the major credit unions. And this would be Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Excuse me. So very important to do that. But also, when you are on the state of Maine government site and you are clicking this, it will give you. It should direct you to the resources to this as well. But I'll also give you some here shortly. Notify your bank and ask them to make a note on your file. Again, this is incredibly important because now people do have this information that is still primarily used in terms of identification. So let them know ahead of time. Change your banking passwords, your credit card passwords, your social media, and your email passwords. If you can, set up multi-factor authentication at any of these types of sites. Almost every single one of these will allow that. Multi-factor authentication is going to be when you type in your credentials. It will then send you a code on your mobile device or on your home phone. It can call you and give you a short code. Again, just further ensuring that it is really you setting up these passwords on these sites. Because for those of us that maybe still do all of our banking through mail, whether it be through credit cards or just for your regular accounts, and we haven't set up our online accounts. What this means is that with this information that people have compromised for you, they could go and independently set up those accounts. Then they'd be able to lock you out of your banking, of potentially your email. So really important to follow up and make these changes. Be on extra high alert for phishing or scam emails, calls, or texts. As you know, they now have your information, so you're going to be even more of a target. If you work for an organization that has an IT and or HR department, please reach out and let them know that your information has been compromised, and so that they can be aware and they can work with you on any precautions that they would like to take as well. As mentioned, if you're an employer who receives a report that a current employee has filed a claim, let them know so that they can take steps to protect themselves. If you know that they are still very much employed, don't delay on reaching out to them to say, hey, we've seen this happened. You know, help each of your employees get ahead of the situation. You can visit annualcreditreport.com. This will give you free credit reports, but also it will direct you in how to freeze your credit reports. Excuse me, your credit. They are allowing weekly online reports through April 2021 due to the amount of people that have been affected by the unemployment fraud nationwide. So fill out the form, pick the reports you want, request and review your reports. It'll ask you if freeze your credit, unfreeze my credit. It will direct you to each of the different credit departments, rather. And this will make it so that you are freeing your at each one individually. So you have to do it at all three, not just don't just go to Equifax, go to every single one of them. You can also do this for a loved one. Should you have a spouse that has been affected? Should you have a parent that has been affected? Should you have a minor that's information has been compromised and you are their guardian? You can do this through this process as well. So that is kind of the current landscape. Again, just a warning to everyone to be diligent, to make sure that you are following through with all of the correct processes. And then lastly, I do want to leave you guys, and then I apologize, there isn't a direct slide on this about this, an important defense if you have not been hit yet, and that is simply to go to www.maine.gov/unemployment. On the left-hand side of the page, it's going to say click here for unemployment benefits, register, login to reemploy Maine. Once you click on that, it will give you options to create a reemploy Maine account. Do this. Go in there and make an account. In the chance that your identity has been stolen, if you can make an account before the perpetrators or the cyber criminals, they will then no longer be able to create a claim for you or try to steal funds from the state on your behalf. This creating an account does not mean that you're signing up for unemployment benefits. You have just created your login for the portal, and this will negate anyone else trying to access it as you, hopefully. Folks that have gone through this process and have frozen their credit, have talked to their employer, have talked to the state, and have gone through additional issues. I've heard a couple cases where it has been deemed fraud, and then there was an appeal done by the person that had stolen their identity, and it was overturned, and the money continued to get paid out. If this escalates, definitely follow up with the state again. And even the Secret Service, they are on top of this as well. That's who is monitoring this situation. So, be your own advocate. And if we have any questions, again, as mentioned earlier by Andrea, please reach out. I'm at max.greene, Greene, at tylertech.com. And I want to be able to help you guys along the way, and so we can all help each other get through these stressful times. And again, if you have become a victim of this, I am very sorry. I've gone through it as well. Just stay diligent and make sure to follow up and do those fraud reports, and don't forget to change those passwords. So thank you guys. Stay alert and secure and safe, and again, any questions, please shoot my way.
Max, before we sign off, we did have a couple of questions that came in.
Sure.
We have one from Dana, and the question is, any guidance that you could provide to offer an employee who actually got a fraudulent bank deposit for her actual account of a claim that employer reported as fraud? What did they do then?
Okay, so to be clear, it got direct deposited to her actual account, even though she did not. She did not initiate it, and instead of it going to someone else's account, it went to her direct deposit account. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, she should let her financial institution know, and then still submit the fraud claim and put those details into her fraud claim. And between her financial institution and the state, they should be able to return those funds back to the state.
Oh, okay. And then another question was, you mentioned before, like if you are become a victim or if you know that you have, like some of the steps is to changing your passwords for your accounts and everything, and going through your credit and freezing that with all the credit institutions. Are there any particular guidance you can offer to make your passwords more secure? Like any tips, I guess. Like Jenny, should we do like lengths or numbers, or combination of numbers and sequences, like and so on and so forth?
Totally. And so we kind of, I'll tell you that the nomenclature in passwords is always changing. But the strongest advice I can give is kind of our classic 15 characters or longer, with numbers and special characters, or do a converted phrase, something like, I like to go on long walks at Hinkley Park, and only use the first letters, again with upper and lowercase and alphanumerical with special characters. We do want to make sure we're avoiding and characters like password with $2 signs. That's really not unique. And then we want to just avoid names and patterns and sequences. So not using our kids and their birth dates, or our pets and 1, 2, 3. And also avoiding trying to use the same password at multiple sites. So for all of those things, hopefully have unique passwords. That said, I know how stressful that could be, and I have, been myself not always eating my own dog food with those kind of guidelines. And a really easier way to do this is to get a password manager. LastPass is an example of this, or Dashland, and there's a ton of them. Just make sure you do your kind of due diligence and read the reviews. But this will allow you; they will create a complex password for you and store it. And then all you need to remember is the password to your password safe. So that's a great way to go if you're concerned about remembering your passwords. But then additionally, not forgetting to do that multi-factor authentication, because then, again, not advocating for a weak password, but if you have even a less strong password, or for that matter, if someone just figures out your complex password, you are still notified if someone is trying to log in to whatever platform that may be. And if you get a notification from your multi-factor and you know that you have not tried to access that, you can then go right away and change your password, just to ensure that no one is going to go all the way. So I guess that is the advice I would give across the board for passwords.
Awesome. Thank you, Max. And like you said earlier, if any of our attendees have any questions for Max, definitely feel free to reach out to him directly. And with that, I'll just kind of wrap things up. I just want to thank you, Max, for volunteering and working with us for this wonderful presentation. I want to remind folks that to stay up to date on all the Chamber's virtual events or replays, you can do so by subscribing to the Chamber's email list or by following the Chamber across our social media platforms. A follow-up email will also be provided to all of you who registered, including a replay and some of the links and resources that Max mentioned during the presentation today. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.